Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the mute. If you have any questions, you can use the chat box and go to meeting and send me a little chat about what you have a question on, and we'll get started. So today we're going to go through accounts receivable, and we're just going to talk about some of the tips, some kind of hints that help us use accounts receivable better. And we'll just touch a little bit on some troubleshooting techniques. As you know, we are here doing our Keystroke Live. We do it every Wednesday at 10 o'clock. And the first Wednesday of the month is reserved for Michael Gabb. Let's talk about some of the tips, and then I'll go into Keystroke and show you these. We're going to take a look at the AR parameters. There's many different parameters, both in advanced POS and regular POS, that can help you kind of streamline the process based on your business needs. We're going to look at the invoice search function. It's a way to actually find a customer and their balance based on an invoice number. We're also going to use a little trick there, and that's a period with a number followed by the period. Is one way to use that also. You'll see two different ways. We're going to talk about having it default for the amount due, applying the payment automatically to all open invoices, oldest to newest. I'll show you the Shift F8 kind of key combination to toggle that on and off. We'll go through the finance parameters, and there's just one new parameter in there about billing periods, and we'll talk about billing periods. And then we'll just review some tech tips on how to troubleshoot if you have a problem with accounts receivable. So I'll get started by jumping into Keystroke here. Alright, so we'll go ahead and just log in and go to the accounts receivable module. Let's first of all take a look at some of the search parameters, or some of the parameters. So I'm going to the payments menu and selecting parameters at the bottom, and these are some of the settings that'll help us kind of streamline this. A couple of things. Invoice search, we're going to talk about that. That's this toggle box over here. And when we have this on, the program acts a little bit differently about the numbers you may be entering in the customer entry field. This is kind of a new parameter here. This is to restrict customer lists to active AR only. If this is checked, and it is on new databases now, then the list of customers is only going to include ones that have credit limits or balances. And some of the skipping options I've turned on prior to this, it just helps. Normally you're going to put a payment in, an ROA payment today, and you just want Keystroke to default to today. If you're doing a lot of backdating of payments and so forth, you would want to probably uncheck that so you can actually be prompted to put the date in. So let's talk about the invoice search. I'm going to go ahead and close this box here. Normally what we would do is we pull up a list of customers and look around and try to find somebody that has sent us a payment. Sometimes, normally you know who you got a payment from, but there are sometimes that the names might be kind of misleading, or you might have a check that says, please pay up invoice number 33 or 333, and then you have to go find it other ways. Let me first just pull up this customer. I've got some transactions in here. This is customer number 22, just for our reference. I'm going to say OK to this here. I have some similar invoices here. For instance, I have one that's invoice number 10, and it's for $334.86. I also have a similar dollar amount, same dollar amount, but a different invoice number, and I've kind of duplicated these on purpose. And notice how my cursor is actually in the left-hand field here. So there's two ways to do a search. First way, I think, is kind of the tricky way. We'll go ahead and clear this and start over. If you put in the invoice number, I'm looking for invoice number 33. So what the trick here is put a period and then the invoice number you're looking for. And these could be big numbers. And when I hit enter here, well, so much for that. Oh, sorry. It's up here. It's this box up here at the top. That is interesting. Well, we might come back to this. This is the data I just set up. So let's go ahead and pull up customer number 22. And then what I'm going to do is, let's say I'm receiving a check today, and I just put in the check number, whatever that might be. When I hit enter a few times, if this list were very long, if this were more than 1 or 2 pages, it might be hard to find it. But notice how my cursor is in the left-hand side. I can therefore just type in like 33 or 30. Oh, that's why I was looking for the wrong invoice number. I was looking for invoice number 35. Huh, no wonder I didn't do that right. Let's start over. Sorry about that. So if I put in .35, it actually pulls up the customer for me, and then I can put in my check number and so forth. And then I could actually type in, again, the 35 that I'm looking for right here, and it jumps to that invoice. I was looking for invoice 33. I think I should have been trying for 13 is what I was shooting for. And so then it's easy then to hit enter and say, okay, I'm going to apply some of the payment to this invoice. So that's one of the search features. Let me do this a different way. This is going to clear the screen. So again, we can type in .33 right here in your entry field, so you don't even have to go to this box above it. Let's make sure I get the right number. Let's do 13. And then it pulls up the correct customer. You could also set it up to just have it go up into this invoice number field by itself. And if I put in 13 here, it's going to find invoice number 13 for this customer too. So the invoice search is a good feature to find the invoice when you're maybe not certain what the company name is or how you might have entered the company name into Keystroke. Let's take a look at the parameter about that I do have turned on, and it's turning on the default to the default ROA payment to the amount due. This just helps us if we're a small business and pretty much we get lucky that our customers pay us every month. I don't necessarily need to come down to this box here. I don't need to make note of the balance and then type it in or looking at the check. But if you have a lot of outstanding invoices and you don't get paid on a regular basis, you want to turn that off so you're not always having to change the number. It also helps if you're doing things like credit cards. Sometimes they'll just say, can you charge $100 to my credit card? And then we would leave it at 0 here. But if your customers call and they say, oh, let's pay off my whole balance. What's my whole balance? And let's use my credit card. The program's going to help us out with this here. And in this case, I changed the payment type, and it cleared it. So let's go ahead and talk about the applying of the payment. There's a parameter for that, and it's right here. Apply payment. This is very handy for people that pay off all their oldest invoices first. If you're in a business where you're receiving checks that are paying off just specific invoices here and there, and new ones and old ones, you don't want to turn on the apply payment. I'm going to turn on for an example here, and we'll put in this customer 22 again. And notice that once I have hit enter past the amount field to confirm the amount, it will populate all the fields for you. Sometimes you don't want that to happen because they might not be paying the finance charge, for instance. And they might not be paying this invoice because they're always disputing that invoice or something of that nature. So sometimes you don't want to have it turn on to pay all the old stuff first. I'm going to show you a different little trick here. Under payment parameters, I'm going to turn off the apply payment the way it was before. I'll pull up the customer. And now it's still defaulting for the full amount, and when I hit enter, then it brings me down to applied. There's a hotkey here. It's the Shift and F8. And the Shift and F8, if I hit that now, will automatically apply everything oldest first. So another way to say that, if we pull up this customer, and let's say they just wanted to pay off $200 today, but all the oldest stuff first. Once I put $200 in and I hit enter, I can use the Shift F8 key combination to have it apply oldest first. So it's going to take care of that finance charge and then $196 on the other invoice. If you change the amount, they say, well, let me pay off $400 instead. I can just come down and hit Shift F8. It'll toggle it off. Shift F8 again, and that will now pay the $400 to the oldest invoices first. So that's the applying of the payments. I'll just quickly go through these parameters. If your primary payment is receiving checks, you should have this set to check. If you're going to be taking credit cards all the time, you might set it to your Visa credit card, for instance. But normally it's either check or credit cards is how people are paying things off. This credit payment type should really never be touched. It should always say the on account. It's just what it does in Keystroke for a balancing entry. Things like disabling the customer note, maybe you don't want to see it in AR, things like that. There are some new settings. These are in advanced, and also the invoice search function, the way it works is an advanced only feature. But down here is how we can now control the credit memos and how they act. And credit memos are really just ROA payments that we're doing in Sales Manager. So we keep the clerks out of here. We have had a few calls on this new parameter. Just keep this in mind to you dealers out there, that when they call and say, I can't see all my customers on the list, it's probably this parameter here that says if you don't have a credit limit, I don't want to see you on the list. That's pretty much how that works. Let's take a look at the finance parameters and talk about billing periods. Under the finance menu, we call it the billing period, and that's the current period. Before we start showing you how this works, I wanted to show you the parameters. Let's take a look here. So this is where you put in your APR. This is 18% annual percentage rate. Normally, billing periods are 30, 30, and 30. Let's keep it simple. That's what it's always been. For some people that have thought there's a problem with that, for instance, the month of February is way different than the month of January in the number of days. We have added this new feature about monthly. When we turn this on, the program will actually calculate the billing periods based on the months. So in this case, I'm going to have a 31-day billing period for December. I'm going to have a 30-day for November and 31-day for October. But it might change. Like next month, that'll be different. So you don't have to come in here and get really creative and start changing these. Some people want to be very accurate down to a day on their finance charges, and I understand that, and so that's why we've come up with this new feature called monthly. So I'll set it to that, the grace period. This is interest, our compounded interest here. We're going to leave that the way it is. I'll say OK. So now if I ever do calculate finance charges or on one customer or more, I always have to set the billing period. Many people are mistaken. Let's say it's the 10th today, and I'm getting around to November's statement. And you notice I put in like 11.99. That's another trick hotkey to have it find the last day of the month for me in case I can't remember that November has 30 days. And we have a previous month and a next month button. So if I want, I can go back and start doing it in this fashion. Or normally what people do would be the opposite. They would come in, they've already done this month, and then they want to go ahead and do December's. And the program, based on that other setting, will know how many days are in each period and therefore calculate the finance charge correctly. So I'm just going to go ahead and say OK to the 11/1 to 11/30. We do also get a lot of tech support calls when people call in and they're saying, I want to run a statement for everything this customer owes me. Well, that's what statements do. You do not put in a big date range in the billing period. You do not put in 1/1 of 14 to 12/31 of 14. That tells Keystroke that that's the current period, the whole year, and there's no interest in that year. And you get some kind of funny results on statements. So keep in mind that the billing period, it's not a reporting period. It's just the actual current month. In this case, the previous month. So I say OK. Ask me if I like to calculate my finance charges on all customers. I'll say yes. And you might see now on this customer number, here's 22, it actually moved their current finance charge to $3.61 to a previous and recalculated the new charge based on these open invoices. As you can see, some were done today, some were done a long time ago in this tutor data. Let's take another look here. We can actually do finance charges individually. You can pick one customer at a time and hit enter on. These won't change because they've already just been done. And under the finance menu, we have this edit here. This is just a way to get to a couple of the fields. And notice my list here of customers only shows a handful of the tutor database customers. And this is where we can modify the current charge and the old charge. We can actually change some of the oldest open invoice date. That's a date in Keystroke that tells Keystroke how far to go look back in time. Sometimes you might have to reset that. So part of a troubleshooting tip would be pick a customer and go set their oldest open invoice date far back, back enough, and then Keystroke. So I would be okay to error on the side of 01 of 01 of 01, like 2001. When I say okay to that, and I pull up the customer, it's just telling Keystroke for that one customer only, go all the way back in Keystroke time, or at least in this case, 14, 13 years, and see if you can find anything more. So that's kind of a troubleshooting tip. Some of the other things, if we have problems, here's a, let's see. So let's say we put in an ROA payment, and I'm going to go ahead and hit Shift and F8 here. Oops, I'm in the wrong box. Shift and F8 here. You have to be in this area here. And let's say I just didn't pay attention. They send me a $700 check, and then I say okay, and I save it. And then I go, oh, what was I thinking? They just sent me $700. I put in the full amount. A lot of times people want to start tinkering around and changing the numbers here, and if they have really some problems, they're going to get this like negative credit memo, which means it's it's very hard to get in this situation. So then they try to figure out numbers themselves and so forth, and and here it's a negative payment, so we've got problems. I should have deleted this one first. So I just tell people, and we do this all the time, if you have a problem, you can edit the payment. Like there I hit Shift and F8 twice. So I hit Shift F8 once, it cleared everything. Shift F8 a second time, it re-entered everything, and it understood what the balance of this last payment should have been. And then I can go ahead and save it. And I'm going to go ahead and save that. If things get really messed up, you might find you have 2 or 3 payments paying off the same invoice. We always recommend just deleting the payment and re-entering it. A couple things about deleting an ROA payment. I'll just pull up this one for $700. The things that are going to be deleted is the information here, the date, the reference, and the amount. And of course, what kind of payment type it was. So just making a note that it was a $700 payment on this date. There was no check number, but it was a check. You clear the screen, and then you just use the payment delete function. I'm going to do it by date, and I know it's the the last one on the list. When I hit enter here, you're going to get a message that says this removes that information, the date, the reference, and the amount, and it cannot be recalled later. There is no recall for ROA payments because there's really only 3 bits of information: the date, the reference, and the amount. And then you say OK to that, and then it's gone, and then you say, OK, I didn't get any errors, everything looks good, let me fix this the way I wanted it to be from the beginning. And now I'm going to hit Shift F8, that auto apply, and then I'm going to go ahead and save this. F10 or OK, and then save. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Some of the tips about AR. We showed you that. One of the things I didn't show you, I'll just show you real quick here, this F3 to view invoice. Let's go back to Keystroke. And let me show you what that's talking about. So I pull up this invoice. If the customer calls and says, hey, I think it was a $30 or $40 invoice or $50 invoice with something on it, you can actually highlight these open invoices and hit the F3 key. It's like the edit key, and at the bottom you'll see it says F3 View Invoice. So we hit F3, and it basically shows us what's on that invoice in a very layman's terms. It just shows you you have a case of Pepsi, some chocolate bars, Time magazines, and the total. It doesn't show you the tax and discount and so forth, but it gives you good information. You might see balancing entries and so forth, or payments that have been paid off. Let's hit escape here and I'll show you one of those. I just hit control page up there to browse back to the previous transaction. So just like in Sales Manager, if I pull up the customer and I hit control page up, it'll pull up the last ROA payment for that. Sometimes it's easier to hit control page up after entering the customer to go back to the last few payments that they've made instead of trying to do that payment, edit, ROA, customer number, find it, hit enter on it. So again, the control page up keys work just as well. Here's where some invoices were paid off. So if I highlight this invoice, invoice number 10, and hit the F3 key, here's what a normal paid off invoice looks like. There's the line items that were purchased. Here you have the on-account payment on the 13, on 1/1 of 13, and then you'll see the ROA check and the ROA balancing entry right there. So if you see some funny numbers here, or this amount due is doubled or something like that, then it's time to delete the ROA payment and re-enter it. So that's pretty much it about some of the quick tips in accounts receivable. I'll go ahead and unmute the crowd here, and if anyone has any questions for me, we can ask away. Does anyone have any questions? Great. All right, well, if you think of any questions or need some help with AR, just feel free to give us a call here at SBS. And everyone have a good day.